Hey there, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're gonna answer the question, why did World War II change everything? If you want more videos like this one, or even more specifically, if you want more videos where I just talk about a topic for 12 minutes straight, then please do let me know in the comments. I have a ton of random things that I like to talk about here on this channel, but could unreally fit into a normal video structure. So this could be fun. Anyways, let's get into it. So why did World War II change everything? Well, the reason I thought to make this video was because I've recently seen quite a few comments from people saying something along the lines of World War II did unreally change anything, or at least did unchange anything all that important or significant. And while I am not going to dive into whether or not World War II was a good thing, or which countries were right and which ones were wrong, I am going to attempt to explain why I think the vast majority of people would disagree with those statements, and why I think World War II did change a lot of things. Obviously, this will be my opinion, and anyone who disagrees with me is also welcome to share their opinion either in the comments below or in a video of their own. The first way in which I think World War II changed everything was through the introduction of what we now consider to be modern warfare tactics, technologies, and weapons. For example, before World War II, fighter planes were mainly used as a defensive measure, whereas after World War II, they were much more commonly used as an offensive weapon. This change in tactics was exemplified by the use of aircraft carriers and jet fighters during the Korean War. The introduction of rocket-propelled weapons also changed the nature of warfare. Although rockets had been around since the mid-19th century, they were not widely used until World War II. As many of you may already know, Germany was the first country to field the V-1 and V-2 cruise missiles, which were the world's first mass-produced guided ballistic missiles. These weapons changed the nature of war because they allowed for attacks from a distance without having to send in actual bombers that could be shot down by the enemy. The next thing that World War II changed was the geopolitical makeup of the world. I think most people would agree that before World War II, Europe was the dominant force in the world, both economically and politically. After World War II, the United States, and to a lesser extent, Japan, took over this role. In fact, before World War II, no other country or group of countries outside of Europe had ever fought in a war against European powers and won. During World War II, however, Japan conquered large parts of East Asia and the Pacific. While most of these territories were eventually lost, Japan did manage to keep a hold of some of them, such as Taiwan, which it still owns to this very day. Additionally, the US and USSR became the only two superpowers left after Europe was devastated by the war and physically and economically drained. This state of affairs lasted for several decades and only changed after the collapse of the USSR in 1991. World War II also changed the relationship between nations. Before World War II, colonialism was still seen as an acceptable practice. However, the atrocities committed by the Axis powers during the war led to a decline in popularity of colonialism and eventually its end. Most European colonial empires fell apart in the decades following World War II. The last colonial empire, Portuguese Guinea, only gained independence in 1975. Post-World War II also saw the creation of the United Nations, whose stated goals were to prevent another world war. It should also be noted that after World War II, fewer countries wanted to be neutral and instead wanted to join one side or the other of the looming Cold War rivalry. This meant that many of the independent states of the pre-World War II era no longer existed, such as Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and the Netherlands, who were all either occupied or no longer desired to be independent due to pressure from the Soviet Union. Speaking of the Cold War, World War II also changed the relationship between the military and civilian leadership in many countries. Before World War II, civilian leaders held the ultimate authority over military matters. Many countries began to adopt a more professional military approach and thus shifted decision-making power towards military leaders. This shift in power was most evident in the United States under the control of U.S. Presidents Harry Truman and Dwight D. Eisenhower. Both men were former military leaders who had extensive experience in national security matters. This trend towards military leadership continued throughout the Cold War and continues to this very day. Next up, World War II changed the role of women in society. Before World War II, women were mostly seen as homemakers and child rearers. However, with so many men away fighting in the war, women were forced to take on new roles in society. They worked in factories, farms, shipyards, and offices, jobs that were traditionally done by men. This change in role allowed women to gain new respect and recognition in society. Women's rights activists used this newfound respect to push for further changes, such as the legalization of abortion and contraception. Many of these changes were eventually adopted, although progress was slow. It was until the late 20th century that women began to be treated as equals in many Western countries. Another thing that World War II changed was the way that wars are fought. Before World War II, most wars were fought between two evenly matched opponents. However, World War II was a total war, meaning that the entire strength of each nation was being used. This included not just the military, but also the economy, industry, and science. The outcome of the war was in doubt until the end, and it resulted in the deaths of over 40 million people. This showed that future wars would likely be fought in the same manner, and that any future war would be catastrophic. Thus, the idea of deterrence was born. Deterrence is the concept that one superpower can prevent war with another by building up its own strength and capabilities. This allows the potential opponent to believe that any war between them would result in mutual destruction, thus deterring them from attacking. The Cold War was essentially a prolonged game of deterrence between the USA and the Soviet Union. One superpower never attacked the other because they knew it would result in the end of both their countries. Finally, the last thing that World War II changed was the course of the 20th century. World War I had been the catalyst for many of the problems that plagued the first half of the 20th century, such as the rise of fascism, communism, and nationalism. World War II, on the other hand, was the catalyst for the latter half of the century. The political, economic, and social changes brought about by World War II set the stage for the events of the second half of the century, such as the collapse of the Soviet Union, the end of the Cold War, and the rise of globalization. It is hard to imagine how any of these events would have unfolded if World War II had not happened. In conclusion, I would argue that World War II changed just about everything. Its effects can still be felt today and will continue to be felt for many years to come. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. Thank you. Bye.